Okay, we ready to get going? All right, I will go ahead and call us to order for our study session. We're going to move some items around. So first off, we're going to see item number 3, DR 22-63 Morrison Ranch multifamily. And we've got Ashley, if you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman. As you mentioned, this is DR 2263 Morrison Ranch multifamily. This project is located east of the northeast corner of Higley and Warner Roads. The property is already zoned multifamily low, so we're just talking about design review tonight, which is related to the site plan, landscape, grading and drainage, elevations of the buildings. Specifically tonight, I'm seeking input from the Commission on the layout, the elevations, and the colors and materials. Staff continues to work through some other items with the applicant. We did recently return first review comments to the applicant, and we're awaiting a resubmittal. In terms of the site, it is a 15-acre site. It's zoned multifamily low with a planned area development. It is part of the Morrison Ranch PAD that was approved in the 90s. This project proposes 231 multifamily units across approximately 20 buildings on the site. They are proposing 3 different building types with multiple color schemes. In terms of landscaping, they are consistent with the Morrison Ranch plant palette, providing pecan trees, Fantex ash trees, Raywood ash trees throughout the site. The required common open space for the development is 45%, and they are meeting that requirement by providing 46% common open space. I will note that throughout the site, the amenities are provided and distributed well throughout the site. There's the pool and clubhouse building on the south end, closest to Warner Road. At the center is pickleball court, bocce ball, and then a park and ramada area at the north end of the site, along with a dog park along Bloomfield Road. I didn't mention on the site plan, but there are 2 primary points of access from the site, one from Warner Road that provides a ingress-egress, and then another access on Bloomfield Road that staff continues to work with the applicant on. In terms of pedestrian connections throughout the site, staff feels that the applicant has done an excellent job of making sure that all of the buildings are connected to one another, the open space, exterior access points. We've also talked with the applicant about providing connection points to the adjacent commercial to the west when that eventually develops. And so they have identified 2 proposed locations depending on the configuration of the commercial when that comes in. There is going to be opportunity for this development to connect to that commercial, which will provide a benefit to both developments, we believe. They won't be installed at this point because, again, we don't know how that commercial might develop, but we have identified some locations for future opportunities. So staff is primarily seeking feedback from the Commission tonight on the elevations. Staff provided first review comments to the applicant based on the elevations that you see in front of you now. Some of our feedback was that they really perhaps overly used the board and batten siding. There wasn't a lot of window diversity, and we just thought that they needed some more diversity of materials. So the applicant has provided an updated elevation for building B, and so we just want to get some feedback from the Commission if they're headed in the right direction. The other thing that I'll point out with this elevation is on the rear, which is the elevation on the bottom. They've got just a number of pretty plain looking garage doors, and so you'll see some improvements on their updated elevations. This was also part of the original elevation package for building B. So again, just heavy use of that board and batten siding. They do have some stone along the front, but no other diversity of materials. And then same with building C. So as I mentioned, they've provided us some updates just to show us the direction that they're headed. They've worked on building B. For us, this features board and batten siding, lap siding, stucco, stone, and you can see on the bottom right image, that's the rear. They've provided greater diversity in their garage door. Staff feels that they're definitely headed in the right direction with some of these modifications, but just want to get some Commission feedback on that as well. if you've got any thoughts on other areas for improvement. In terms of colors and materials, they're proposing 3 color schemes for the different building types. Again, they feature lap siding, board and batten, stucco stone, metal awnings. Curious if the commission has thoughts on their color schemes and if there should be additional diversity, because they do just have the 5 different colors. They're broken up across the buildings, how they're distributed, but a total of 5 colors throughout the site. With that, I'm happy to take any questions that you have and interested to hear your feedback.
All right. Thank you, Ashley. I'll bring it up. Anybody have any questions, comments for Ashley? Anybody want to kick us off? Commissioner Bianchi?
I actually don't have any questions. My general comments are, I think it's a productive use of the open space that kind of adds to the amenities and the connectivity. I'm in agreement with staff, and I encourage you guys to continue with the elevation as shown in Building B in your ongoing discussions with the applicant. I do think it's a better use of the glass, stone, and materials. I think it provides good articulation and relief. I guess one of my concerns would be if they go with a darker color scheme, that paint fading, especially on the south and west facing sides. That would be a concern of mine. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Nobody? Commissioner Anderson.
I think the only concern I have is, I don't know what building number this is. Looking at the elevation. In sheet A4-00, just looking at the roof just seems very overpowering, that one too, compared to what's happening below it. So I would just recommend find a way to kind of shorten it down some. I mean, even if they have to go with just a larger mechanical well or whatever. I mean, if you look at the side elevations, look like they're bringing it up to a ridge line. Is there a way, I would recommend just kind of find a way to shrink up that roof a little bit. It just seems like just very overpowering to what's happening down below. But other than that, it's a nice looking project, I think.
All right. Anybody else? No? Ashley, I actually, from a overall perspective, I really like the product. I think that it looks great. From a board and batten, I could probably agree with staff. I don't know that it's really that much. I think that it offers kind of that farm feel that Morrison Ranch stays true to in that part of the development. So I don't really have an issue with that. Elevations I'm fine with. I would agree with Commissioner Anderson on the roof line of this elevation. Just kind of seems a little bit overpowering, I guess is probably the best way to put it. But anybody else? All right. Thank you, Ashley. With that, we're going to jump up to number 1, DR 22-102, Morrison Ranch 2, Phase 2, or 2, and Noah, you're up.
Excuse me, Chair, I need to recuse myself from this one.
All right. Good evening, Commissioners. I am here to introduce the study session item for DR 22-102, Morrison Ranch 2. It's a 236-unit apartment complex that is being built on in a piece of land in the eastern part of Morrison Ranch, near Power Road and Warner, or Elliott Road, rather. It's worth noting that this piece of land is already zoned MFM, and is therefore already is entitled for multifamily development. The input I'm requesting tonight on this project as it goes through its first review, I'm looking for just a number of comments. I want to briefly run the building layout on the site past you, present the elevation design elements for the B and C elevation styles for comment from Planning Commission, which planning staff has had some questions about, and then the carriage style building and clubhouse building elevations. In particular, I'd like to spend a little time focusing on the clubhouse building elevations as we look at this project. So just to give you a very quick introduction to this project, 236 units in a mixture of 2, 8, and 16 unit buildings. It really is oriented around the Beebe Street, Morrison Ranch Parkway, Elliott Road frontages. It's a really outward facing development, and then has a central open space spine. Just to give you some context of where the buildings that we're looking at tonight, how they're situated with one another, and to provide you some context for how these buildings are laid out. So you can see the kind of different rings of buildings there. I wanted to present to you that this is a phase 2 of an existing development that's across the street on Elliott Road, called Highland Groves. It is also around 220 units of a multifamily residential. So this is something that it will have to fit in with, has had a similar development history. So getting into the elevations that planning staff is seeking comments on, this is a prairie style. It's looking to kind of mimic some of that Frank Lloyd Wright kind of influenced prairie style architecture, very horizontal in nature, a lot of windows and transparency and some decorations in those windows. But I wanted to point your attention to some feedback that, or to gain feedback on things that planning staff have maybe had questions about, namely the window designs. There's a lot of blank space on some of the side elevations, for example. Some of the window shapes staff had questions with. If it's, largely a horizontal building, we've got these very vertical windows, and we wish to bring those forward to the design review board for discussion. Also, just to ensure that the materials are deemed to be appropriate, it's a lot of stucco, and while there's brick accents, we wanted to have a discussion with the design review board regarding the materials used on these elevations. The same goes for the ranch style, which is used a little bit less frequently on this site, but it's it's more of kind of a style that I think is reminiscent of something you would see in the Midwest and other parts of the country. Staff had some questions about some of the large blank spaces on the facade, wondering if there's ways that things can be laid out a little bit more in a way that's a little bit more appealing, especially since those will face directly into single-family neighborhoods, albeit with a large landscape setback. And then just questions about whether materials are being used as effectively as they could be. They're using some detailed wood or some wood shutter details, but again, it's still a good amount of stucco. They're using some of the kind of board siding on the upper eaves there, and interspersed throughout the design, and then there's some stone on the bottom. But thinking about whether those are being used efficiently on the side elevations, or whether there's a better distribution that can be met across the buildings. Then there's some carriage style homes that I wanted to point out to the design review board. These carriage style homes can sometimes be can be a bit of a design challenge. And so the blank facade is going to face non-residential development to the east, so that's not so much the point of concern. The point of concern is really the side and front elevations, on whether they're fitting well into kind of the neighborhood that's made up of those other residential buildings that you saw, and whether there are ways that the entries in particular can maybe be adjusted to better fit kind of a full residential character of this site. And then the materials, again, the same questions apply for those elevation styles that I mentioned, since the ranch style applies to the ones on the right. Finally, we come to the clubhouse design. It's the central structure on the site. It's where the open space spine moves out from, and it's what is visible from the front entry off of Elliott Road. And so this is the set of elevations for that. They use some stone along the bottom. They use a little bit of the board siding that you saw in the ranch style elevation, and then some of the details that you saw, some of the window overhangs, the wood shutters. But planning staff had some concerns about the level of detail and maybe the lack of potential residential character that might be present on this clubhouse, and whether there are ways that the form and the materials on this building can be improved to potentially better fit some of the diverse elevations that are included on this site. This feels like it may not fit very well with any of the elevations that have been presented, and thinking about ways to improve that through, again, form and materials. So just to reiterate, layout, the B and C elevation styles, ranch and prairie, the carriage style buildings, and the clubhouse buildings are all points that planning staff would like any input from the design review board on. I will take any feedback that the planning commission has. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And it's important to note that Commissioner Anderson has recused himself from this discussion. Any questions, comments, or anything else for Noah? Commissioner Bianchi.
No, real quick question. So the carriage houses, are those on the eastern and western sides there? Those aren't reserved garages or anything like that, correct?
So garages are part of the residential parking. There are 2 units in each of these carriage houses. They are on the east side of the property, and then there is one on the western side. That one on the western side has an enhanced elevation. I may not have included it here, but it's also included in the I believe it's in the staff report. And so it's primarily along that eastern boundary, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No? Nobody? All right. So I just, with regards to the site design, I don't know that I have a problem with it. I just have a question. Are we looking, or is this development looking to mirror the complex that is to would that be the south or the north of Elliott Road?
Yep.
Is that the intent?
So it's meant to, it's even in the title of the Morrison Ranch 2. It's meant to kind of be a second phase of that multifamily development there with some slight changes. The site design is a little bit different, and the architectural styles that are being used are a little bit different than the ones that were used on the previous one. The Craftsman is fairly similar, the A style, so I didn't have us look all that closely at that in the study session, but the B and C will be fairly new introductions to the to that multifamily community.
Okay. Just from a taste perspective and really, I guess point of note would be, I personally, I think B and C, those styles I like. Okay. The A style is falling flat on me. I don't really care for it.
Okay.
And really it's probably more the color and just the boxy design of it.
Okay.
So, other than that, I really like C. I think it looks a little bit more modern and brings that development up a little bit. I understand that we are trying to mimic the north side of that, and this is a second phase of that complex. However, I think we have an opportunity to enhance this a little bit. So,
okay, fantastic.
Anybody else? Yeah, Commissioner Blazer.
Yeah, you asked for a lot of input, and I guess I don't have strong feelings around a lot of the ins and outs, but I think it's pretty close to what's occurring to the north. I like the layout of the the site layout, but I guess I don't have strong feelings about all the specific input you were looking for. Just I think it does a pretty good job of matching. I think the property to the north is pretty simple, and I understand it if we're trying to enhance it, but I like the designs.
Okay. And to be fair, Commissioner, a response that it's appealing as it is also worthwhile input. So thank you.
All right. Does anybody else have anything? Yeah, Commissioner Johns.
Well, if the goal is to achieve what is to the north of it, it does have different styles, but also there's a lot of similarities. Mm-hmm. To the north, I noticed that they had a lot of lower roofs at the first level mm-hmm. that they popped out. This is achieved with B and C, where it kind of did the opposite. They brought blocks out up above. So mm-hmm. I think they're still achieving that. They're just doing it in a different way. It still meets the style, still meets the... So I don't have an issue with it. There's nothing wrong with not copying exactly.
Right.
And that was done, 20 years ago?
Right.
So... and on your comments on the site, I'm okay with any, I didn't really see anything that stuck out like a sore thumb with the site plan. Materials seem to be consistent with the north side. Mm-hmm. The clubhouse, you did make me go look back at that one several times. You made the comment that it's a commercial look, but I think just because the way the elevations are, it's making this kind of lay flat, because there is a lot of the prairie where they're taking, it's not just the overhangs, but it's the blocks that they tie in together around the corners. And that is happening. And if you compare the, front elevation to side elevation, there's a lot of movement around those corners. I think a 3D would do this justice.
Sure.
And really would make those pop. I do like the big arched, I think it's stone. We don't have the, and that is something on, wait, where are the keynotes? We don't have the keynote. Oh, there they are.
It's stone on the columns.
Yeah, it's stone. Thank you.
Commissioner.
So that has a strong entry to it. So, and since it is the main entry coming in, you kind of want to make it stand out from the
Right.
residential to begin with. Say I'm the clubhouse. I'm not another house.
Right.
So I don't have a problem with that. Window variations. I think you said something about that. What was that the last one?
The window variation, that was part of the comment that was made on the clubhouse.
Yeah. I think you can work with the applicant a little bit more with that, but it is the clubhouse, so they're trying to get a lot more windows in there. So, but yeah, I really support this project, and I think it's going to be a good addition and tie in very well with the north side.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Johns.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, Commissioner Bianchi.
So I actually would agree with the chairman's comments that he had talked about with the elevations. I do like the pitch, the hip roof, and the gable elements. I'm in agreement with staff on the side elevations. I like that the building layout is kind of internalized to the site. I do understand that the eastern half is going to back up to that planned light industrial. So it's less of a concern for me for kind of that stark rear elevation, but I'd really want to avoid that, especially along BB Street.
Right.
And it looked most prevalent. I think it was building type six, I think was for me, or 6 or G.
Yeah.
I'm trying to read my notes. But other than that, nothing of too much concern. But those are my overall comments.
Great. And
Thanks.
Commissioner Bianchi, and just in a brief response, the carriage house that faces BB does have an enhanced elevation provided for it. I can mostly describe it on this screen. It's that one that's got the rear elevation on the left. But there's that it kind of repeats that entry feature with the kind of wooden pergola there, and the entry is just a little bit more pronounced all the way through to the other side. But it still looks a little similar to the one that you see on the left there in building type 5.
Okay. Thanks,
So
Noah.
we can work with them on that.
Thanks, Noah.
All right. Okay. Noah, did you
Great.
get what you needed?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we're going to go to item number 2, DR 22-97, Highland Park. And Noah, you're up again.
Great. Well, this is another kind of. Thank you. It is another multifamily product that's being brought forward by New Village Homes. It is a 138-unit residential complex at the corner of Val Vista and the Knox alignment. Just to give you some reference on where that is. It is right here. It's on a piece of land that currently is half in the county and half in town limits. There's currently active general plan amendment, rezoning, and annexation cases active on this site as well in conjunction with this design review. So the purpose of this review is really just to introduce this project. Many of you have worked with New Village Homes just in discussion on the future of this site, on the site design for this. This is really now looking at the architecture, which may be new to most of the commission here, and looking at just some very specific questions about the site design. They've worked through a lot of constraints with the project to make sure that everything works together. And so we're really, in planning staff is really pleased with the outcome of a lot of those, the changes that have been made to site design. So in short, we're looking for just some comments on the design of the site frontage along Val Vista Drive, since it's adjacent to a single family residential neighborhood, really making sure we're maximizing what we get along that frontage in a way that is advantageous for the town, and then just looking at some of the elevation designs, and then a brief question about turf distribution and where it may be most important to keep turf, given that there may be some need to reduce the amount of turf used on the site. So just to give you a brief introduction to the site plan, there are 66 cottages, these kind of single family attached units that are in kind of sets of two or three homes that are located along that southern half of the site. And then the northern half, there's 72 townhouses. The homes are 2 to 3 bedroom in the range of 1,000 to 1,500 square feet. The townhomes are 2 bedroom and they're a little bit over 1,000 square feet. And then all of that is interspersed with open spaces of various types, pocket parks, things of that nature. And then there's a clubhouse and pool facility as well. Again, many of you are familiar with the site design. I'm not looking to belabor that all that much. So the first question that planning staff is bringing forward is the frontage design. This is a fencing plan that I'm providing for you on the screen. It was also included in the staff report, which just indicates the type of fencing that will be used and also how it relates with the placement of structures. So you'll notice that the red dashed lines are primary community walls. They're a split face block wall, and that's for about 50% of the frontage there. And then in the other 50%, you'll see that dog park that's located on the northwest side of the site that has a wrought iron fence and retaining wall underneath that that's being used. So that's visible. You can kind of see through it while maintaining site security. And then that wrought iron fence is repeated in the retention basin on the other side. So again, you have some homes backing onto Val Vista there, the cottages that have the primary community wall on the back. And then there's some site visibility. We wanted to bring forward just questions about whether the site kind of comes up to the street enough in a way where it really just maintains a residential character. Planning staff is overall very impressed with the design of this landscape plan and the design of how this frontage is put together. There's just some specific questions about transparency and how that neighborhood is visible from the street and what we'd like to have up in the front of that development. Right now it's a dog park and a clubhouse and then the backs of homes. So some discussion about what we'd like to see on that frontage really emphasized. Then we have the elevations for the cottages. There's a wide variety of cottage elevations that are being provided with this project. Staff is very pleased with the level of diversity that's provided. Some of these, for what it's worth, are similar to those that have been seen in the Hampton Court development at Val Vista and Ray, and also in other developments that New Village has done in the East Valley. And so the question for the Planning Commission is whether there's a belief that these designs have just sufficient compatibility between one another, just ensuring that we feel that the designs are compatible enough to be kind of mixed and matched with one another and not cause any concerns with the design of the site, ensuring that there's sufficient architectural diversity in the eyes of the design review board, and then making sure that the level of detailing that's used on still very small homes is sufficient for each of these cottages. And so I've provided just a little bit more information for you on the elevation designs, included the side and rear elevations, and then also given you a landscape cutaway on the right side here that just shows you that each of these homes will have a front of a small non-turf landscaping area. So also keep that in mind when thinking about the overall architecture of the cottages. This is meant to just provide some comments on these elevations overall. Then we have the townhouse elevations on the northern side of the site. These are larger structures that contain two-story townhouses with a private open space in the front facing a pedestrian plaza. As you'll see in this rendering here, you'll see that those structures face into inward-facing pedestrian paths. Patios are relatively near one another. It kind of provides a pedestrian street feeling a little bit through there along that path. And then there's garages in the rear that can be accessed by those kind of interior access roads. But so they're going for kind of more of a traditional farmhouse style of architecture that we've seen in other developments in the town. It's kind of a new spin on that with the way that the building is articulated, the way that that townhouse form is kind of, it's applied to that, I apologize. The way that the farmhouse architectural style is applied to the townhouse style of structure. And so staff is just looking for any general comments that the design review board has on just the elevations that are provided for the townhouse product, ensuring that they're up to the quality that the town is looking for, just maybe answering questions about transparency, given that those buildings are relatively close to one another. Overall, planning staff is quite happy with these elevations, but we're ensuring that the design review board is on the same page as well when it comes to looking ahead to this design review case. So in short, just to reiterate, just the layout of the frontage, I apologize, this is from those bullets are from a different slide or from a different project. There we go. Site frontage design, cottage home elevation, townhouse elevations, and then the turf distribution question. There's one very quick question I wanted to provide on turf distribution. Right now, that dog park on the left side, on the northwest part of the site, the retention basin, and then the pocket parks and the some rear retention areas all have turf. There's artificial turf in other parts of the site as well. And so given that we have a pretty strict requirements on how much turf can be included on a site, and the applicant has signaled that they wish to preserve the turf in those pocket parks on the southern side of the site, you'll see those two rectangles bordered by trees amongst the cottages there. Staff would like to just get feedback on what the most important areas of turf are to preserve in the event that we need to do some turf reduction to ensure that we can make those pocket parks work and make sure a dog park amenity works in the way that the applicant wishes that it will. So with that, I will turn it over to the design review board for comment. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Noah. Would like to start. All right, Commissioner.
Thank you. So, Noah, I think that this fits really well into a very strange triangular shaped piece right by a railroad. And I think they've done a pretty good job with the elevations. I don't have any real problem with the articulation. I think they flow together pretty well. It does have a much more varied appearance than a lot of others that we see. Mm-hmm. But I don't think, given the general vicinity, that's going to cause any real eyesores. In fact, I think it'll look pretty good. I think the layout's pretty good. I did speak with the applicant during the week, and he went over some things with me. And my understanding is that dog park was moved because the people to the south did not want it to be near their area in the bottom right, which would be the southeast corner. And so I don't really have a problem with the dog park there in the frontage. I think, driving down this way, we had just approved that. What was it, a U-Haul with the interesting colors over there 3 months ago. I think this is above and beyond what would be palatable in that area. So good job, I think.
Yeah, great.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, Commissioner Blazer.
Can you just explain to me the turf situation?
Sure. So we have a fairly strict regulation on how much turf can be provided on a site. So actual grass that is being irrigated. Planning staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that number is 10% of the site of landscaping. Is that correct? Yeah, that's a question for Jeff Lee.
Is that a new requirement? Just curious. I've never heard it come up.
And I'd be curious how that flows in. Maybe this is something we can research, how that flows in with the new regulation or I don't know if it's a law or ordinance that allows statewide, if grass is, I guess, required, if they want to do turf. I mean, if we can still regulate that. That would be just my question. I'd be curious to know.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Right. So I believe the regulation is, if I remember correctly from talking to Jeff Lee right now, it's something like 10% of I believe of non-building area, but I'll have to verify that to make sure. This is still an active design review, so these are things we check on while we're doing the DR.
Great. Yeah, and I don't know that I'd have an opinion necessarily on that. I guess from the town standpoint, I'd want it to be consistent up front along the frontage of Val Vista. It seems like the town would be interested in maintaining a consistent look there. Mm-hmm. But I think that they've done a really good job on the Val Vista frontage of breaking it up. I think it's going to be consistent with other neighborhoods along there, if not even better, with the wrought iron and some visibility, a little bit of visibility to some landscape area. So I love the diversity of architecture. With these two very distinct products, I think they've done a really good job designing it, and having it be quite diverse. So I am in favor of the project. I think it's great.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Blazer.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, Commissioner Johns.
Well, thank you, Noah, for the presentation. I'm also curious, I'd support, I never heard the turf comment before. And if it's something new, I'd like to, if you could point it out to us, give us the ordinance on that. It kind of makes it hard to have dog park amenities, have regular amenities, and everything else without. And I really would think it would be owner's right to put as much turf in as he wants. It's his bill.
I'll certainly research the origins of the
that one's new
regulation.
And I supported Val Vista way back in the day when it went in. They did a wonderful job shoehorning that one into a tough site, and it looks like they did it again. I don't have any really comments on the elevations or such. They, again, it's a very similar product, and I think it was a very successful product at trying to do a infill in a situation where it was a tough infill.
Right.
The pedestrian connections, I can't tell from this. Everything's black and white, and it's a hard to say. But I would be concerned about as you're working with the designer to make sure that the pedestrian connections because they got a lot of building in a lot of places. So, and I remember last time parking came up a little bit. Make sure that they, it's hard to tell if their parking calcs are, but I'm sure you guys are working with them on that too.
Yep.
So.
Commissioner Johns, just to give you just a little bit of background as well, we've worked with them extensively on the pedestrian connections and really making sure all the visitor parking areas, open spaces, everything have some sort of active path connection. They've done a great job of accommodating our request.
Yeah, but yeah, I support this, and it looks like a really good product, and it will kind of finish up that corner a little bit next to that railroad or that tracks. So.
Great, thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Yeah, Commissioner Blazer. Or Bianchi, sorry.
Okay. So Noah, there'll be a general plan and rezoning being filed with this?
Correct.
Are all these three being filed concurrently?
Yes.
Okay. Because I thought it was interesting that we're seeing the design review before the general plan or the zoning on this.
Yes. So the reason why I'm bringing this forward right away is just with multifamily projects, it's important to just give you a look at it as soon as possible to get feedback on these larger projects. Second of all, there's an active annexation case that's being filed with this, and given the kind of the timeline can vary greatly depending on petition signatures and things like that. Doing the design review study session up front just allows the applicant to have the most flexibility in going forward with a multifamily project. So I'm trying to bring forward multifamily projects that come through just to make sure that there's this feedback and this conversation going on. That gives them more flexibility to run the DR concurrently with then this rezone and the general plan as well. Okay. So
yeah, understood. I'll reserve my land use comments and questions for that. So I guess as far as overall input, I like that the open space at the entry, but my concern is that it's possibly at the cost of needed open space to kind of break up the massing of the units internal to the site. I'm glad that there's no units placed, along the railroad tracks, but what I don't want is I don't want the unit count to kind of detract from the design and quality of the layout or the site plan.
Right. And to provide some context as well, there's in the rezoning case, there's a PAD deviation being requested from going from 45% required to 41%. And in exchange, then the private open space is being provided with each of those cottages and in the front patios of those of the townhouses as well. So the applicant is looking to bring forward a design that balances maybe a little bit less of that common open space in exchange for a lot more of that private open space that obviously a lot of residents want.
Thanks. And I think as we go forward, I'll probably have those standard initial concerns with parking and circulation and solid waste pickup. Thanks.
Of course. If you have any other questions, feel free to let me know as well.
All right. Any other comments, questions? Commissioner Fay.
So yeah, I do have a few, and I'm going to cross a little bit because we're bringing a design review forward, Usually I try to design review. I'm probably not a great person because I try to stay away from aesthetics because for the most part I think that that's a capitalist. For example, you're putting multifamily right up against a railroad track. Is that a good idea? Yeah, you know what? You're the ones who have to rent it or sell it. That's for me. Not who am I to say? But first of all, on the frontage, there's two entrances. There's the main entrance, and then there's the one up on the far north end. Is that going to be knockboxed or gated or?
So that one is an emergency access only. So that would be, I believe, and perhaps I can get correction on this. I believe that is exit only, or it's an emergency access. I'm trying to remember specifically which that is.
So as I was looking at that, my first question was, why isn't there an access on Knox?
So there's no access on Knox explicitly because of of the neighborhood feedback that was provided. There's a very low density residential neighborhood to the south. They're vehemently opposed to any connection onto that out to the south. And in addition, Knox is also, I believe, only an easement. And it actually doesn't have the same kind of public right-of-way that you would see on a lot of other town streets. And so it's very difficult to run a connection to Knox. And in addition, there's a lot of resident opposition to it. And so this site has actually been designed to buffer away from the southern side as much as possible. It's why you see that extra landscape buffer on the southern side, and why you see just solid wall all the way across that southern side with no access points through.
So if it's an easement and not a right-of-way easement, if it's an easement held by somebody else?
I believe that's correct.
Well, because right-of-way is an easement. So
right. Well, right.
If it's something that they can't use, okay, that's one.
Yes.
Neighborhood opposition, I'm not sympathetic to. You need 2 points of access, and they're supposed to be further apart for the very reason. I don't want people using my road. Feedback from the neighbors is not one that's necessarily fair. So if it's not just a private easement held by somebody, I would not be in favor of putting an emergency on the north as much as something coming out on Knox, unless it really isn't accessible. If it's an easement that's owned by RWCD or something like we see on one of the others, okay, then you've got to live with that.
Right. This was discussed in the pre-application for this design review. This was talked about at length by Bob Camps from the fire department, and Bob Camps, I believe they had the issue of there's dirt roads back there that's very difficult for site access and would probably need some sort of improvements. And there's the question of Knox, and again, I believe that's a private easement, and I think that makes this a lot more challenging to run access on the southern side. We can continue that discussion,
please. Parking, if I read correctly, so the parking numbers are based on every unit having one in the garage and two in the driveway?
Yes, that is correct. That number of parking spaces for the cottages, for example, where you have the one in the garage, two in the driveway, allows that parking count for the whole site to be a lot higher than is required.
Well, or it allows you to have a lot less extra parking than probably is necessary. We've had that come up before, and it's a generous interpretation. I wouldn't vote against it because of that, but
sure.
It inevitably seems to result in these fairly compact places where nobody can park because everyone's got stuff in their garage, so the neighbors are all parked in, and it seems like it's a generous interpretation from where I'm at. And then in terms of the actual elevations, again, that's the part I usually stay away from. In the townhomes, they look totally fine. I think the description of cottages is a little bit generous.
Okay.
The one man's cottage is another man's trailer home. Some of these things, we've got some developments like this in the East Valley. Some of them look like very little, almost like tiny homes. Some of them look like rundown trailer parks. And so this would be really, I'm talking about the north half of the site. It's one of the few type aesthetics that concern me.
Okay.
Other than, I mean, there's enough variation, and of course the renderings look fine, but I mean, the renderings, you could always put some puppies and rainbows too to make them look a little better. But there's a concern on that, particularly that aesthetic. Okay.
Okay.
And the table of variances was not filled out. Is that because we don't have the data yet?
That's because it's all part of the rezoning case. That's
all
on file with
coming.
this. That's running concurrently to this. Yes.
Fair enough. And that's I'm kind of delved into some of those other cases because they kind of overlap. I'm not.
They do. Yes.
And that's fine. I do rely on some of those when we get to that point. So, good on that. Okay, thank you. That's enough for me.
All right. Anybody else? Commissioner Anderson.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding the second point on the north there. You said fire did review this and address that concern?
Again, this is an active design review case, so the fire, I'm sure, still has more comments to provide on it based on the final outcome of the site. But this was talked about at length, the access points, just because the site has also changed quite a bit. For example, there was a house that we had to move around, and we were really struggling to find a second access point that really worked at all. This was the outcome because that house was able to be moved. There was a lot of talk about that access point onto Knox that would align with, I think it's 159th back there. I forget what alignment that is. And ultimately, it was believed that that would be very, very difficult to achieve because of the nature of the roads back there and the private street holdings that define a lot of that neighborhood.
Okay, I'd feel more comfortable if we get fire approval of the second access point that far north, because right now the site doesn't meet fire code. If I'm remembering it correctly, in the 2018 fire code, if you have a second means of egress on the site, it has to be equal to or more than half the distance of the diagonal of the site. And as you can see, this does not meet that. So I would feel a lot more comfortable if fire signs off on this.
Right. And there'll be questions about the remoteness and distinctness of that access as well. So that'll be a conversation we continue to have as we keep going through design review on this plan.
Okay. Other than that, I think the elevations, I think they're well designed. I like the project. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay.
Anybody else? No, just for me, I would agree with Commissioner Fay. My questions are around the you actually line out setback site boundary design. Obviously, that's part of the design review. The site layout. So when we get to that, I'd want to know what those are up against that railroad and how that's going to interfere there or interact, I guess. And then question, because I did have a conversation with the applicant, it sounds like they are actively looking to do kind of a phase 2 in the future of the north piece of this corner. I don't know how that might play into that second entrance or not. If it's too far down the road, maybe it couldn't. But just kind of thought. And then I would also agree with if there's entrance on that south easement, if there's some way to figure that out, I think it would probably be much better. Seems like the flow would be much better. So
Sure.
From a design perspective, I think it's a great product. I don't have no problem with the cottages, no problem with the townhomes. I think it is actually looks very, very nice. So
Great. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
do you get everything you
Chair.
need?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on from there to item number 4. What time is it? 6 o'clock.
Chair, I'm gonna recuse myself from this.
Thank you. Actually, let me ask you a question really quick. Do we want to move on to the regular agenda, take a couple minutes, and come back to this item at the end of the regular agenda? Do we want to just plow through? Plow through? All right, we'll plow through. So Commissioner Blazer is going to recuse himself. Item number 4, we're GP 22-09, Stillwater Rivulon, and Z 2207, Stillwater Rivulon. And Ashley, I believe that's you.
Thank you, Chairman. It is me, and I have actually a very short PowerPoint for you, so
Even better.
I think you made the right choice. So this is GP 2209 and Z 2207. It's the Stillwater Rivulon project. It is located within the Rivulon development. Rivulon extends from Gilbert Road east to Lindsay, and then from Pecos Road south to the Loop 202. It's about it's 200 plus acres in total, and this proposed rezoning as part of that PAD is interior to the site, as you can see by the red box on the screen. It's north of the Rivulon Boulevard Road and just west of the La Arboleda alignment, which I understand is under construction. Looking at the zoning map of the site, it is currently zoned business park. Surrounding properties are also zoned business park. There are a couple of pieces within this portion of the Rivialon development that are not under Nationwide's ownership and remain county islands. However, our general plan does anticipate in the future that all of this area would be employment, or in this case, the applicant is proposing a residential change on the subject site. Just you can see there are some existing office developments just west. That is the Rivialon Commons office project, and so this would connect and integrate with that development. Tonight I'm seeking input on the general plan amendment, just general thoughts and feelings on the request, as well as the rezoning and deviation requests that are being proposed. The site itself is 10.3 acres. It's part of the larger 280-acre master planned development that we call Rivialon. They're proposing the general plan amendment to go from general office, which allows a variety of employment type land uses. So from that to residential, 25 to 50 dwelling units per acre. And then to accompany that application is a rezoning and PAD amendment. This is part of the Rivialon PAD and will remain part of the Rivialon PAD, but they're just looking to make a couple additional modifications. So with the rezoning, it would go from business park to multifamily high with the PAD. With the rezoning request, they would look to make 2 deviation requests to the standards of the multifamily high zoning district. I've highlighted those in red. It is a little difficult to see, so I apologize for that. The maximum height of the zoning district, the base zoning district, is 55 feet. They are seeking an increase in that by 10 feet to allow for a maximum height of 65 feet. And then they're also looking for a side deviation to Rivialon Commons, that office building that I pointed out on the aerial, from 10 feet down to 8 feet. That driveway that goes in between the two buildings has a slight curvature in the road, and so this would just allow for a little bit more flexibility in their landscaping along the road where it curves. Largely, they would meet the 10 feet setback requirement. As it relates to height, I do want to point out that this project, this site, is located within the vertical development overlay area. It's within area number 5. Area number 5 allows for a maximum height of 90 feet for regional commercial uses, general office, and business park uses. It does not grant the additional height for multifamily high, but my point in bringing this up is that the height request is consistent with what could be developed there in terms of having buildings that are higher than 55 feet. In addition, the Rivialon PAD has some existing deviations for office development related to parking. So they've got some alternate standards for the spacing of landscape islands. They allow for diamond planters. The parking stall dimensions have an alternate size. And then the existing PAD again allows for modification to the screening standards. Our code allows for 25% of CMU screen walls to be landscaping. The Rivialon PAD allows for 50%. And so they want to ensure that these same standards would apply to the multifamily high portion of the project. So that's another request that we would modify that condition that exists in the Rivialon PAD today to say business park and multifamily. Along with the PAD request, the applicant would be adopting a development plan. So any future development, any future design review case would have to be in substantial conformance with the development plan that they've submitted. So I wanted to make sure that the commission had an opportunity to see this development plan and provide some comment on it. You'll note that it is just east of the Rivialon Commons office building and between the La Arboleda roadway. There's a primary access point off of La Arboleda and then one to the south off of Rivialon Boulevard to provide access to the site. The applicant is not proposing any perimeter walls that would separate the two buildings, and so they are intended to interact well with one another. Between the Rivialon Commons office buildings, there is some common green space that would carry on east to this site to kind of carry on that feel of the Rivialon development. So they are proposing one building with this central to the site with parking surrounding. I did note in my staff report that as part of this application, they have indicated that they are anticipating submitting an administrative use permit to allow for some shared parking. on the office site. The residential would meet its parking requirements for residents, but the guest parking, they are seeking to have some overflow onto the Rivulon Commons office site, as indicated by that kind of greenish color just west of the site. So staff will review that as part of a separate application when a design review application comes in. That is my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, but appreciate any feedback that you have on the request.
All right. Thank you, Ashley. Questions for Ashley? Yeah, Commissioner Blazer.
That's twice you've done that.
Oh, did I?
Do you want me to go get them?
Commissioner Bianchi? I don't know. I'm sorry.
It's okay. So Ashley, I'm sorry if I missed it, if you mentioned it in your presentation, but so we've got a PAD over this. Is there a DMP or development master plan or similar for Revulon where there's specified uses or locations specified for the whole project area?
There isn't. There is a PAD that covers the full site. When this comes back to you, I will be sure to include that. My apologies for not having that for you tonight. Okay. But it does show areas of development. On that existing plan, it shows this particular portion of the site being future office. It is not as specific as the development plan that you see in front of you for the remainder of the site. It just outlines the boundary of the PAD.
Okay. And is this the only known residential request currently in Revulon? Do they have other areas reserved for potential future residential?
Chairman and Commissioner, this is the only one that we know of at this time.
Okay. And in your discussions with the applicant, have they stated why this specific parcel was proposed and maybe something not closer to the existing circulation or the current retail amenities that they've got closer to Gilbert Road?
Sure. I think that, as Rivulon builds out, we would anticipate some more retail amenities along the Lindsay Road frontage. And so there is going to be, I think, a component of that. It is kind of insulated to the site, which I think, helps because it follows the development pattern rather than taking, something closer to Lindsay or closer to Pecos. So it's along Rivulon Boulevard that is constructed and provides great access through that site. I will add, too, that a few years ago, the applicant, when they proposed the Rivulon Lakes office buildings, around that time, they submitted a master traffic impact analysis for the site, which showed, future anticipated uses, all of the access points, and future roadway conditions, and that did include a component of multifamily. So we have anticipated that a request would come in at some point for that. This is consistent with that study.
So I think as far as just quick feedback, I think given the size and uniqueness of Rivulon, I certainly understand a request to kind of add another use such as this. I would probably like to hear a little more, especially from the applicant, of why this specific location, Rivulon, was selected, given that they're requesting additional height and kind of more of a denser product. And like I had talked about, closer proximity to the existing amenities, unless we know of more amenities coming right around with this proposal. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Bianchi. Anybody else? I think it's right that time. Yeah, Commissioner Anderson.
Ashley, just a quick question for you. So you had a slide up there of current design standards, I think from the PAD, is that right? And I think in there, I don't know if it's that one, but yeah, that one there. So bullet point 3, 25-foot drive aisle widths. And the applicant is wondering if they can keep the 25-foot drive aisle widths. Again, going back to fire code, because of the height of the buildings and the stories, 26 feet actually kicks in for the ladder trucks. So if that were to stay that way, with the fire code, the 26-foot being more stringent, would that override this standard? Or do we need to get this addressed here?
The applicant would still be required to meet the fire code, which has the 26-foot wide aerial apparatus access point in proximity to the building.
Okay.
And this would apply to the drive aisles that don't serve as a fire access, but perhaps we could clarify.
I think you just clarified it for me. So if it's a fire, wherever the fire access roads are, those would go by fire code, the 26, and wherever they're not, they can revert back to the 25 feet of this.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Fay.
So this, I'm glad we've got this one up because it there's 2 points. They both kind of relate to the parking standards. In my mind, so these are the parking standards that are already in. I would keep calling these stipulations, but in the existing, the fact that they're there doesn't mean we do this for consistency purposes. In my mind, the standard that we are consistent to is the published standard, and I would hope that when you, I mean, I don't think we're actually being asked to approve this at this point. It's going to be in the next item, but that these should be evaluated based on necessity, not just, oh, it's consistent with what's already there. If it's not needed, to me, we should be defaulting back to the standards across the board on these things. That said, the ancillary to this is you talked about the shared parking between the commercial, or not commercial, but the office and the residential. I was going to call it industrial, but in general, I'm a fan of that as a policy matter. I think that when you've got disparate usage, there's no reason I'm saying that, I'm bringing it up because I'm usually the guy who's beating the drum about no double counting the spaces, stopping that. But that is a good, like when you get a church and school next to each other, it makes a lot of sense for them to share parking. And I suspect offices and higher density residential is a use that there is good legitimate ability to share parking spaces. So I applaud that direction. That's all my feedback.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Nobody? All right. Okay. Actually, the question for you is: does Rivulon already go through all the way through to Lindsay there, or are they going to develop that?
Yeah, Rivulon Boulevard.
Correct.
That's a great question. It's under construction.
Okay.
It does, but it's not open.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was complete. I know that they've been working on it, but it's been a while since I've driven past there. So, I really don't have a problem with this. I think that this area needs high density, especially for the high end employment corridor that we've got there, the potential there. I would be curious to know what else in that area is already zoned for multifamily or high density housing. Otherwise, I wouldn't have any issue with approving what they're asking, as long as we're within code. I don't see an issue with it at all. So, all right, did you get what you need?
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. With that, we'll go ahead and have discussion of regular agenda item meetings. I do have one question. I've got a couple of comment cards from community members. This one it just says lumberyard, and I'm not familiar with which one that is. Yeah. Okay, you'd like to just address that. Okay. Yep. Okay. With that, do we know of and I'll go to staff on this. Do we know of any items on the current consent agenda items that need to be pulled to non-consent? Are we aware of any?
We're checking that right now. Josh Rogers is checking if there's anybody here to speak on his consent item.
Okay. And then do we know of anything on the non-consent that if we were to make a motion to move to consent, that anybody's here to discuss or needs to see those presentations? Are we good, Josh? Okay. All right. So I would go ahead and like to present to the commission that we keep the consent item agenda as is, and we move items 12, 13, 14, and 15 to the consent agenda. All right, so I'll entertain a motion if that's okay with everybody. Oh, wait, sorry, not yet.
You were kidding.
I'm jumping. Just kidding. Go ahead and take a real quick break and come back in about 5 minutes. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. All right. Commissioner Fay, can we start? All right. Yes, Commissioner Blazer. Everybody tonight is Commissioner Blazer. All the comments. Commissioner Blazer was very vocal this evening. All right, so we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, can I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Blazer,
Here.
Commissioner Johns,
Here.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yeah.
Commissioner Fay,
Present.
Commissioner Bianchi,
Here.
Vice Chairman Munt,
Here.
Chairman Simon.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, we discussed the agenda. I will entertain a motion at this time to approve the agenda, moving items 12, 13, 14, and 15 to the consent and keeping consent as is.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to move items 12, DR22-14, JBJ Electric Company, item 13, ST22-02, Waterston Central, Phase 1, Parcel 7, ST22-03, Waterston Central, Phase 1, Parcels 4 and 6, and item number 15, ST22-05, Waterston Central, Phase 1, Parcel 5, all to the consent agenda, with the rest of the consent agenda remaining as is.
All right, I have a motion to approve the agenda by the Vice Chair. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Anderson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, carries. With that, we'll move to communications from citizens. At this time, members of the public may comment on matters within the jurisdiction of the town, but not on the agenda. The Commission's response is limited to responding to criticism, asking staff to review a matter commented upon, or asking that a matter be put on a future agenda. And at this time, I just have one, and that would be Mr. Rowell. You have 3 minutes.
Develop the Neely Street lumber yard into high-density housing. We live about a mile from that site, but just had a few comments. First, they were very generous with their time. They helped me understand the process they were going through and their plans for this location. They were transparent and patient, and I think we had to agree to disagree. I agree that this general industrial zone site has potential for something, but I do oppose any rezoning of this to multifamily or single-family attached housing. Reasons for this are, first of all, Gilbert has enough multifamily housing already built or in the works. I lectured you guys about that last week. I won't do it again this week, last meeting. Generally, the usual not in my backyard complaints or not in their backyard complaints about the potential for character change, traffic, water, the usual stuff. And finally, from an aesthetic standpoint, industrial activity has kind of an authentic appeal all of its own, in my opinion, more so than another looming apartment complex. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. I don't have any other comment cards from community, so we'll go ahead and move on to our report from Council Liaison, and I don't see Councilmember September. We don't have any other councilmen. All right. I don't have anything. We'll move on to public hearing. All items listed below, consent items, all items listed below are considered the public hearing consent calendar. The Commission may, by a single motion, approve any number of the items where, after opening a public hearing, no person requests the item be removed from the consent calendar. If such a request is made, the Commission shall then withdraw the item from the public hearing consent calendar for the purpose of public discussion and separate action. Other items on the agenda may be added to the consent calendar and approved under a single motion. And I don't have any requests to remove anything from the consent. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
As a matter of fact, you can, Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent items 9, S21-12, The Orchard, 10, DR 22-42, Higley Apartments, 11, S20-13, Northside at Santan Village, and 12, DR 22-14, JBJ Electric Company, 13, ST 22-02, Waterston Central Phase 1, Parcel 7, number 14, ST 22-03, Waterston Central Phase 1, Parcels 4 and 6, and item number 15, ST 22-05, Waterston Central Phase 1, Parcel 5.
And I'm sorry, we're going to need to amend because Commissioner Anderson needs to recuse himself from item 10, correct?
That's correct, Chairman Blazer. Thank you.
So we will we will take that motion. We'll amend removing item number 10, and I will entertain a motion.
Please just strike item 10 from my motion.
to approve
Thank you.
the consent agenda items minus number 10. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, not hearing any. The motion passes. Now I will entertain a motion to approve item number 10 on the consent agenda.
Yes, Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve item number 10 on the consent agenda, DR 22-42, Higley Apartments.
All right, I have a motion on the table. Commissioner Anderson is recusing himself. All those in favor? Or excuse me, I need a second.
Chairman Blazer, I'll second that motion.
All right. Commissioner Fay, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Not hearing any. The motion carries. We don't have anything on the non-consent agenda items, so we will move past that. I've got administrative items. Administrative items are for the commission. Discussion and action. It is to the discretion of the majority of the commission board regarding public input requests on any administrative item. Persons wishing to speak on administrative items should complete a public comment form indicating the item number on which you wish to address. The commission may or may not accept public comment. Do we have any administrative items? All right, not hearing any. We'll move on to communications from Planning Commission. Oh wait, I need to approve the minutes.
It's okay.
That's okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from July 13th, my birthday, 2022.
I have a motion to approve the commission minutes from July 13th. Happy birthday. All those in favor?
No.
Excuse me, I need a second.
I'll second. He gets very excited with that motion.
Thank you, Chairman Blazer.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Not hearing any. Motion carries. Now I'll move on to communications from Planning Commission staff.
I would just like to say thank you to Commissioner Blazer for lending his name to everyone else on the dais today. That was very kind of you and very humble. Thank you.
I almost feel this would be a kangaroo court if we were anywhere else. So appreciate that. Eva, do you have anything for us?
Yes, Chairman, Commissioners, I would just like to take a moment to introduce our newest employee, Veronica Gonzalez. She will be our principal planner, replacing Amy Thames, who retired, and she joins us from Mesa, where she worked for about 22 years. So lots of experience in planning, and we're very happy to have Veronica join our team.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Welcome. Look forward to working with you. All right. With that, it looks like we've come to the end of our agenda, so we'll go ahead and adjourn our meeting. We will see you at our next meeting, September 7th, correct?